we just got a much clearer picture about what the 2024 Red Sox are going to look like. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin, and the Boston Red Sox play a legitimate baseball game less than 2 weeks from now. Next Thursday is when the Red Sox open up their 2024 season, but before they get there, they're going to have to figure out what this roster looks like, which is why this morning we got our biggest round of Red Sox roster decisions / cuts yet, and it's a real interesting one. So what we are going to do in today's video is we're going to break this down. We're going to talk about the roster moves the Red Sox decide to make, whether it be decisions, whether it be cuts, whether it be reassignments. We're going to talk about every single one of them, and we're going to talk about how all of this could impact the 2024 team. But before we get into that, we are on the road to 10,000 subscribers. We're getting real close to just 100 away at this point. So if you want to help us get there, we're in the final stretch here. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Okay, so before we get into the sort of big moves made this morning, I do want to talk about one roster decision that was made this weekend, and that was Alex Cora announcing to the media that Josh Winckowski will not be in the Red Sox rotation. He is officially going to be a bullpen arm, at least to start 2024. Now, obviously, this is not a roster cut, but it is a big roster decision because what it does is it boils down that last rotation battle to just Garrett Whitlock and Cooper Criswell. Alex Cora also mentioned that Tanner Houck's in this battle as well. Like, all three of them are battling for the last two spots. I would be really surprised if Tanner Houck ends up in the bullpen and they go with Whitlock and Criswell to start the year. So that's the first impact this is going to have, is it's down to either Whitlock or Criswell. My gut at this point is telling me it's going to be Garrett Whitlock. They've been using him a lot more as a starter than they have been Criswell or Winckowski or really anyone else. He hasn't looked fantastic this spring, so we'll see how it goes. I don't love this idea, but that's what the Red Sox are doing. The other impact that this is going to have is obviously it's going to make the battle for a bullpen roster spot a bit bigger, right? Because now you go from three definite players in the Red Sox bullpen, Kenley, Chris Martin, Brennan Bernardino, to four with Josh Winckowski in there, making it one less spot for all these guys trying to fight for that last roster spot. So this battle for the bullpen just got more intense, and we got a little bit more of a clear picture in terms of what that bullpen battle is going to look like, because this morning the Red Sox announced their largest roster cut / decision / movement of the 2024 season, and this included a whole lot of names and two different types of moves. The first type of move was the Red Sox optioning a player down to AAA Worcester, and there were two people in this category, Tyler Heineman and Joe Jakes. Jakes makes a lot of sense here. He had a really rough spring training, an 8.44 ERA with a 7.06 FIP, still struggling to get lefties out as a lefty. He was walking a pretty decent amount of people, and honestly, his ERA should be a bit higher as he would come into game situations where there were runners on base and allowed them in as well. Just not a great spring for Joe Jakes, with all the other left-handed options out of the Red Sox bullpen doing pretty well this spring. It makes a lot of sense why he was optioned down to AAA Worcester. There is still hope that Jakes can figure out how to get lefties out at the AAA level, because if he could do that, he could be a really effective reliever. But until he does that, yeah, it makes total sense that he was optioned. The other one, obviously Tyler Heineman, and this one's a bit more interesting to me because he did have a really solid spring. He had a 143 WRC plus and a 385 average in 8 games, basically 43% better than the average hitter at spring training. His defense looked really solid. He was a switch hitter, and like I said in my prediction video, I really thought that he had a legitimate chance to beat Reese McGuire out for this backup catching job because he is so versatile and because he was really impressive this spring training. But obviously Reese McGuire clearly beat him out, and now this sort of battle for the backup catching position that Alex Cora had kind of hinted at the beginning of spring training is down to just Reese McGuire and Roberto Perez, and I don't think Perez has all that much of a shot. So it's looking like Reese McGuire is going to be your everyday backup catcher for the Boston Red Sox. I don't know if I absolutely love this. I thought that Tyler Heineman deserved more of a shot to get that backup position because of the versatility he allowed and because he is so great defensively, right? Him coming in one every 4 or 5 days to catch a certain pitcher or to be that sort of, hey, Connor Wong's getting a little fatigued here, let's get someone in there and have really solid defense still. I really thought Tyler Heineman would fit that role a bit better than Reese McGuire could. Obviously, I'm not the decision maker for the Red Sox. They feel totally differently, but in my opinion, Heineman being optioned does have a pretty big impact on what the 26-man team is going to look like. However, guys getting optioned wasn't the only moves the Red Sox made this morning, so let's talk about the other ones. The other type of move the Red Sox made this morning was going to reassign players to minor league camp, and there were 8 players on this list, which is a pretty decent amount. Obviously, there are going to be more as we get on through the week here, but this is a really good start in terms of chopping at what the final roster is going to look like, and there are some notable names on this list. Half of these guys were positional players, and I think of those positional players, the ones I saw that stood out to me, Nick York, obviously he didn't have a fantastic spring, and he was probably never going to make the major league roster, having never played past Double-A, but it was still nice to see one of the Red Sox top prospects getting some time with the big league club, with the big leaguers, with Alex Cora, right? Sort of getting acclimated to this team, because I just always think that's pretty cool. He has some sort of experience before he eventually gets called up. My assumption is because he spent so much time with the big league club this spring that he starts the year in Triple-A, which again is something that's going to be interesting to pay attention to this year. The other name I wanted to talk about that was on this positional player list was Nick Sogard. Now, we actually made the video about Sogard. I still think he was really, really impressive this spring, and even though he did end up getting reassigned and he's not making the major league team, which I don't think anyone really ever expected him to have a legitimate chance to make the big league team, he still had a really successful spring training as he turned heads basically everywhere, right? Greg Breslow mentioned him in an interview. Alex Cora gushed about him the other day. Analysts like Lou Merlone really love Nick Sogard. I think what he did this spring was sort of make himself option C or D as we get further down the depth chart here. Say Manuel Valdez gets hurt, and then Pablo really is starting to stink it up, and then they get David Hamilton up here, and he's also doing that. Nick Sogard, in my opinion, could be plan D for the Boston Red Sox with that middle infield utility depth type. I think if he has another fairly solid year at AAA Worcester this year, we see him in 2025 really crack the club and be that utility option for the Boston Red Sox, but he is no longer with the team going forward this spring. The other 4 players were from the pitching side of things, and there are 2 notable names here, at least in my opinion, one of them being Justin Hagenman, who was always a long shot to make the Red Sox 26-man roster, but he was really, really impressive this spring. Did not allow a single earned run in 7 2/3 innings, and he only walked 1.3 per 9. Yes, he was a long shot, but man, those are some really great statistics. And for the back end of the bullpen, which is sort of wide open right now, I'm kind of surprised that they reassigned him to minor league camp, not so early because there's only a week left, but before we got to those final roster cuts. In my opinion, what Hagenman was able to do was kind of similar to Nick Sogard, but if guys who did make it past this round, who do end up snagging that sort of 24, 25, 26-man roster spots in this bullpen either poorly perform or get injured, Hagenman sort of put his name out there enough, in my opinion, to be a guy that they could flip at some point during this year. Say a Greg Weissert isn't producing the way that the Red Sox want him to produce. He's got options. Hagenman's got options. They could flip him and still feel fairly confident because of what Hagenman was able to do this spring. The other notable name that I want to talk about on this list is Jorge Benitez, who, very similar to Justin Hagenman, was sort of a long shot to make this bullpen, but because of the fact that he was a lefty, that list got a whole lot shorter, and I think he had more of a chance either way. Like Hagenman, he had an incredible spring training where he had a 2.34 ERA in 7 2/3 innings, but an absolutely ridiculous strikeout rate of 42.4% of batters. He was striking out almost half the players he faced in spring training. So I am a little bit surprised again, like Hagenman, he didn't make it further into into these rounds of cuts here, as we're going to see a lot more throughout this week. But I guess they are sort of sitting there saying, well, he hasn't pitched above Double-A yet. There's no incentive for us to have to put him on the major league roster. We can stash him in Triple-A, ensure that he is continuing to do what he did in spring throughout the Triple-A level, and then again, like Hageman, be that sort of guy that if the bottom half of your roster doesn't end up performing the way you want to, you've always got him as an option in Triple-A. So all of these cuts do make sense, right? There's nothing really here, either on the optioning side of things or on the reassignment side of things, that's really super surprising. Although I will say this is going to make the battle of the bullpen obviously a lot more intense as we get down to only 6, 7, 8 options left for 4 spots. People are going to start really trying to push themselves onto this roster. And then the other one, again, going back to the Tyler Heineman thing, it essentially, in my opinion, confirms that Reese McGuire is going to be the Red Sox backup, at least to begin the 2024 season. So overall, these cut/moves in general, sort of unsurprising, but unlike we've seen in the past, these are some more notable names. I did want to mention 2 more things that really aren't roster decisions so much as they are general news about the Red Sox, but I figured I'd throw them in here anyways. The first one being that Ceddanne Rafaela is going to start getting some reps at both second base and shortstop for the last week of spring training. Alex Cora announced that, I think, Saturday or Sunday. This is a pretty big switch up from what they were saying before, where everyone was saying, no, we want him in center field. That's where he's most valuable. In my opinion, this switch up is simply to try and get him into the everyday lineup as much as humanly possible. They're realizing, okay, if we could get him to be able to comfortably play both center field and second base, we could squeeze him into a everyday lineup basically every single game during a single week, right? You could do 3 games at center field, then have him do 2 games at second base and really sort of move him around and ensure that his bat is always in this lineup, developing and continue to grow. Because at this point, I don't think it's possible for the Red Sox to sit there and say, yeah, we're gonna manipulate this service time a bit and keep him down in AAA until May. Although maybe this is the move that they're gonna sort of lean on to keep him in AAA for that long, right? If they're like, hey, he needs to really hone in on getting better at second base and shortstop before we call him up. Could be something that they do, but overall, I think it's really interesting that they sort of did a 180 on what they were expecting from Ceddanne Rafaela defensively. And the other one I wanted to talk about is it was announced this morning, right with those roster cuts, that Chris Murphy is going to be getting an MRI today on his elbow. Never a good thing to hear that. Obviously, I was very vocal about how much I think Chris Murphy was going to impact this 2024 team. Alex Cora with very similar words to what he said with Giolito, where he said, we're obviously very concerned. The hope is clearly there that he doesn't end up needing surgery or anything crazy like that. Obviously, really sucks for Chris Murphy, and I really hope that this isn't anything serious. For the Red Sox, what this means, especially with the cuts that they made today, where they did cut Jorge Benitez and Cam Boozer from the left-hand side, the second left-handed job in the bullpen really is coming down to Joely Rodriguez or Lucas Lettige, right? It's essentially those 2 guys, and both have been solid. You've got Lettige, who has a 2.25 ERA in 8 innings with 11.25 K per 9, and Joely, who's right there with him with a 3 ERA and a 10.50 K per 9 in basically the exact same amount of innings. In my opinion, I think I go with Lettige before I go with Joely, as he's had a more continuous, successful major league career, whereas Joely has had successful bursts, but never really a fully, truly successful season as competitive as Lettige has been. So I think I go with the experience there and hope that Joely doesn't opt out. But obviously, this Chris Murphy thing is going to throw a wrench a little bit into what the Red Sox bullpen is going to look like. So a whole lot of news coming out today, again, as we get closer to the final picture for the Boston Red Sox. So let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think? Which one of these news items is most important to you? Which one do you think is least important? And which one do you think has the biggest impact on the 2024 Red Sox? Let me know all your thoughts on the latest Red Sox roster cuts / decisions / everything in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Like I said, on the road to 10,000 subscribers, and we're not that far away anymore. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Again, just helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.